Welcome to the Church of Thomas. Informed consent. Informed consent is a relatively new idea. It's the idea that legally you should make sure that everyone understands what will happen, no matter how unlikely that might be, and still be able to have a decision. It's the idea that you go into a relationship, a contract, an agreement, a willingness to go into a surgical situation where you understand the things that could happen. This is called informed consent. It's important for people to have informed consent because there have been tons of times that people make decisions on just a little snippet of information. The news media is very, very good at giving the highlights of something, but not the whole story. And often people act on these highlights with a great fervor of thinking that they know the entire story. Now, I'm as guilty as anybody of making snap judgments about something and often going off half-cocked with only a third of the information. And later, I have to modify my path because I find out more stuff. One example that came up was recently there was a news story that had to do with mammograms. They are basically saying now that you need to have mammograms later because cost effective and statistically it is not efficient, cost effective, etc., to have mammograms at an earlier age. Now, you have to look at the whole picture. Let's see, this is without a mammogram, 10,000 people, aged 40, would be expected to have 35 of that 10,000 die. Now, that's a very small number. With the mammogram, 30 would die, but the part that the news media did not talk about is that 600 to 2,000 would get treated as though they had cancer. Now, this is an informed consent. A biopsy might have been taken. They may have had a mastectomy. They may have gone into surgery and gotten a false positive. The problem with this is that every time you get treated for something you don't have, you then have the side effects of that. And if you did not have the disease, you now have a risk of side effects for something you don't have. If you learn all of the information instead of latching on to the little sound bite that the news has, if it is something that the news talks about that gets you very interested, alarmed, concerned about whatever it is, healthcare, childcare, the government, politics, global warming, etc., don't settle for what the news media gives you because it is just what they think will sell newspapers or ads on the television or cable subscription. If a subject interests you, what you should do is go and research more about it. Get the whole picture. Because if you act on just a little snippet of information, you're very likely to run into a problem where you're acting on information that is so incomplete, you're going to make a decision that is very different from one that you would make if you knew the risks. Some of the risks of going into surgery is anesthesia. The longer you're under anesthesia, the more chance there's complications. So obviously if it's a toenail being removed, if it's a very short period of time, your chance of having a side effect is much lower. Of course, then you got the chance of infection, but that's versus what you might have had if the toenail hadn't been removed. versus something as big as a heart and lung transplant, where basically for many hours you were under anesthesia with your body temperature lowered, with your body not repairing itself properly for many hours, and then the side effects of the anesthesia. But all of these are written down in the consent forms that you sign. I advise you to read all of these consent forms, because if you come back later and say, well, I didn't know I was going to get nausea after anesthesia, you'll see it's written on there. But at least knowing all of the possible things that could happen, you can ask questions. If you don't understand something, ask a ton of questions. And don't let them do anything to you until you understand and feel comfortable with what the risks are versus what you're going to get fixed, corrected, cured, etc. Here are some verses. Reconciler Gospel of Thomas, verse 38. Many times in the past you have hungered to hear what I say to you now. You have no one else to hear them from. There will be a time when you seek me and you will not be able to find me. Keep seeking and you will find me again. And this is verse 57. Jesus said, "The one is like a man who has good seed. The liar came by night, planting his lies like weeds among the good seed. The one did not allow his angels to pull the weeds. The one said, I am concerned that some of my good grain will be pulled up along with the weeds. Harvest time will show the weeds plainly. Then we will pull them up and burn them." The point here is that among all the garbage that is given to us as information, as news, we need to sift through and find the truths. And if they are incomplete truths, we need to find the whole picture if it is something that concerns us. God bless the whole world, no exceptions. Angel Alive.